The alien fleet arrived on the far side of the moon at 03:17 UTC. Without warning, without transmission, without even a flicker of hesitation, 280 warships, all matte black and angular, glided into Earth's shadow like a swarm of intelligent daggers. They bore no markings, no visible propulsion systems, and no discernible life forms visible from Earth-based telescopes. They simply arrived, parked neatly in lunar orbit, and waited. On Earth, the United Nations Security Council was in emergency session within 23 minutes. In a hangar buried beneath the Colorado Rockies, Quinn Holloway finished zipping up a dark green flight suit, rubbing sleep from his eyes with the back of his hand. The room was dim, utilitarian, and still smelled like the old oil from the Cold War days. A flat screen monitor mounted to the wall showed a grainy image of the fleet, each vessel marked with a blinking red dot. "You sure this isn't just some elaborate military drill?" he muttered, mostly to himself. A tech in the corner, a woman with cropped black hair and a clipboard, didn't look up. They parked there without a word. No comms, no response to hails, no broadcasts. They're not here to trade recipes. Quinn cracked his neck and exhaled slowly. "I was off duty. You were off duty 5 hours ago. You're the only one who's logged over 1,500 hours in low orbit maneuvering with a fighter-drone interface. You're on duty now." He stepped toward the launch platform. He'd flown drones before, but never like this. The new prototype, the GeoFalcon, used a neural interface that required calibration to the pilot's brain. He'd been the only one to fully sync with it without vomiting. As he descended into the cockpit, the hatch sealed above him with a hiss. The world outside went silent. Inside the GeoFalcon, his pulse was louder than the hum of the ship's core. Thin blue lines snaked from the helmet ports into the base of his skull, where they oscillated softly before locking in place. He blinked twice as the HUD flared to life. "Quinn Holloway, GeoFalcon active," came a synthetic voice. "Neural link stable." He grit his teeth. "Let's see what they want." The launch happened so fast he barely had time to feel the GTKS. The GeoFalcon shot up through a hidden silo, rising through the atmosphere in less than 2 minutes. Above 20 kilometers, the Earth fell away beneath him like a memory. Between him and the moon, the black ships waited, one of them peeled away from the formation like a shark circling a swimmer. It didn't accelerate. It didn't maneuver. It simply drifted toward him. "Command, I've got movement." "One of them's headed my way." "Copy, GeoFalcon. Maintain distance. Do not engage." Quinn rolled the fighter gently, keeping his right side angled toward the ship. It was larger than a battleship. No lights. No windows. Just a smooth hull broken only by jagged ridges that looked almost organic. Then it spoke. A deep, vibrating tone buzzed through the comms, flooding his ears with static before resolving into words. "This world is not yet claimed. Surrender your planet. You have no defense." Quinn blinked. "Who am I speaking to?" "Designation irrelevant. You are not a threat." "You will comply." He hesitated. His heart pounded. "You're early. We haven't finished setting up the welcome party." Silence. The alien ship continued to drift toward him, unbothered by his sarcasm. Then the HUD blinked red. "Multiple lock-ons detected," the system warned. "Incoming energy signatures." Quinn yanked the controls and spun the GeoFalcon into a dive, the interface responding like a limb. Bright blue pulses scorched the space he'd just vacated, missing him by meters. "Command, they fired on me. That's confirmed hostile." "Copy. Do not return fire." "Repeat, do not return fire until authorized," he grunted. "Then authorize it." From a hidden pocket orbiting just beyond the moon's edge, a trio of small satellites powered up. Painted black, radar-absorbent, and completely invisible to every scanning method the aliens had used so far. Each one had a payload built not for destruction, but deception. As the alien fleet began inching closer to Earth, the satellites activated. The alien commander aboard the lead vessel, its name unpronounceable in any human tongue, scanned the empty space with a calm sense of superiority. Humans had no planetary defense grid, No orbital mines, no cloaked fleets. Their transmissions were cluttered with panic and disarray. The alien had seen this pattern before in dozens of subjugations. A species caught off guard, outmatched, and overwhelmed. But as the satellites broadcast their first signal burst, something changed. The alien ship's scanners, designed to detect heat, energy, and gravitational anomalies, were suddenly flooded with false positives. 50, then 100, then over 1,000 blips appeared across every quadrant. Each mimicked the signature of a human warship. The alien commander froze. "This is not possible," it said aloud. It rerouted the scans, switching frequencies, running diagnostics. But the signals remained. From Earth's surface, Quinn watched as the alien ship stopped its approach. "Command, looks like your decoys worked." "It's not just decoys, Falcon," came the reply. "They're surrounded and they don't know it." Quinn frowned. "Surrounded by what?" The voice on the other end was calm. "By us." From the dark side of Mars, a formation of human warships activated after months in cold silence. They had been built in secret, launched individually with civilian rockets, their components assembled in orbit. The largest, the USS Silhouette, had enough firepower to take out a small moon. Quinn had never seen it. No one outside the classified program had. Until now, one by one, the ships powered up and closed in. The alien fleet hadn't realized Earth had been watching them long before their arrival, had intercepted fragments of their long-range communications, had deciphered enough to know that the fleet would come. Earth had played dumb, had allowed its satellites to be disabled, had let the fleet think it had the element of surprise. Now the trap was closing. Falcon, we're go for active defense. "You are cleared to engage." Quinn grinned, adrenaline flooding his limbs. "Copy that." The Falcon banked hard and opened fire, twin plasma lances streaking across the void. One of them impacted the alien ship's flank, leaving a black scar across its hull. The alien returned fire immediately. A pulse of green energy struck Quinn's ship, throwing it into a spin. Alarms blared. "Stabilizing," he shouted. The Falcon reoriented itself, trailing smoke. Systems were blinking erratically, but propulsion was still active. The alien ship, now damaged and uncertain, retreated toward its fleet. Across lunar orbit, more of the human ships emerged. Not just from Mars, but from high-altitude orbits above Earth, from hollowed-out asteroids, from cloaked bases on the Moon itself. Quinn watched as the illusion of helplessness crumbled. The humans hadn't been caught off guard. They had been waiting. The alien fleet, still confident in its superiority, began to regroup. They didn't retreat, not yet. But the hesitation was visible. Quinn's fighter limped back toward the atmospheric edge, smoke trailing. Falcon returning to base. Took a hit, minor systems damage. Copy Falcon, recovery team en route. Good work. As Earth's secret fleet closed in around the alien armada, the sky above began to fill with the silent tension of an impending battle. But Quinn knew one thing for sure: the invaders hadn't realized Earth had teeth. Not until it was too late. The medbay lights were too bright. Quinn winced as the overhead fluorescence stabbed through the dull throb behind his eyes. A nurse with a tightly wound bun and the emotional range of a parking meter dabbed antiseptic on the angry welt along his left temple. "You're lucky," she said, not sounding particularly convinced. "If that neural filament had sunk any deeper, you'd be drooling into a cup by now," he grunted. "And yet, no fruit basket." The nurse didn't laugh. Instead, she peeled an adhesive sensor off his collarbone and vanished behind a curtain without another word. He sat alone, wires still trailing from his arms to a bank of monitors that blinked in slow, steady rhythm. Beyond the thick wall of reinforced glass, a cluster of engineers huddled around his flight telemetry. One of them gestured animatedly at a spike in the data. Another shook his head and tapped on a tablet. None of them looked like they'd slept. A low hiss broke the quiet as the door slid open. Colonel Alana Vickers stepped in, her uniform crisp, her expression unreadable. She didn't sit. Your heart rate spiked to 180 when the energy pulse hit. You didn't black out, didn't have time. Quinn flexed his fingers, feeling the residual buzz of the neural interface still ghosting through his nerves. I was too busy not dying. Vickers crossed her arms. You diverted power from the targeting array to reinforce the lateral dampeners. That isn't in the training protocols. Neither is getting shot at by a ship the size of a Manhattan office block. You improvised, I survived. Silence stretched between them for a beat. You're grounded, she said finally, for 48 hours. Full cognitive eval, neural resync, and a psych screen. Psych screen? I'm not the one who showed up uninvited with a galactic armada. The order isn't negotiable. His jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. She tapped the panel by the door and it closed behind her with a soft click. An hour later, Quinn sat in a small, windowless room with a single chair and an old-fashioned biometric scanner mounted to the wall. A gray-haired man in a navy sweater leaned back in his seat, hands folded over a tablet that he hadn't touched once. You dream in color, the man asked. I dream in static, Quinn replied. Let me guess, you're here to decide if I'm about to snap. The man smiled faintly. I'm here to determine if the neural interface caused any cognitive interference, emotional deregulation, memory loss, that kind of thing. Quinn leaned back. You ever tried flying a ship with your brain while being targeted by something that doesn't recognize your species as sentient? The man didn't blink. I've been married for 28 years. A beat passed. Then, to Quinn's dismay, he chuckled. You're clear so far, the man said, finally pulling up the tablet. But the data from your last interface cycle shows something unusual. You responded faster than the system predicted by about 11 milliseconds. That's bad. It's unexpected. The interface learns from you, adapts. But you were ahead of it, Quinn shrugged. Maybe it's finally scared of me. The man didn't answer. Just typed something quietly before motioning toward the door. By the time Quinn returned to his quarters, it was nearly 18 hours after the encounter. He peeled off the medbay-issued T-shirt, dropped onto the bunk, and stared at the ceiling. The room was small, metal-walled, and humming faintly from the life support grid. A digital clock blinked in the corner, counting down to his next clearance eval. He didn't sleep, not because of fear. Not because of pain. But because somewhere out there the alien fleet hadn't moved, and that was worse than aggression. It meant they were thinking. At 0300, the base lights flickered, just once. Quinn sat up instantly. A second later, the emergency alert blared. Red strobes pulsed along the hallway as personnel dashed out of their rooms. Quinn didn't wait for clearance. He pulled on his boots, grabbed the flight patch from the wall, and bolted. Unauthorized launch. Someone shouted over the intercom. Hangar 2. Intrusion alert. He skidded around the corner and nearly collided with Vickers. Who launched? He asked. We don't know. Security feeds down. Hangar bay doors were overridden from inside. They sprinted toward the control center, where a holographic model of Earth's orbit flickered with a new trajectory line. A single object, small and fast, had departed the atmosphere without a return beacon. Signal analysis, Vickers barked. A tech with trembling hands spoke without turning. Not one of ours, but it launched from our base. We think it was constructed in the lower maintenance sector, off-grid. How the hell could someone build a ship in your basement without anyone noticing? Quinn demanded. Everyone looked at each other, no one answered. The object was halfway to the moon before they established visual contact. It was a narrow, angular craft, barely the size of a shuttle. But its heat signature was unlike anything they'd cataloged. It's broadcasting something, the tech said. Repeating signal, low frequency, looks like music. Quinn leaned in from the speakers. A distorted version of what sounded like jazz crackled through. They're sending Miles Davis to the aliens. No, sir, the tech said, confused. Not to them. To us? The alien fleet, still motionless in lunar orbit, had begun to shift, not toward Earth but toward the rogue craft. Quinn stepped back. Someone's forcing contact. The ship slowed as it neared the fleet. No weapons deployed, no evasive maneuvers, just steady, deliberate movement. Then one of the alien ships broke formation, not one of the larger ones. A smaller vessel, oblong and silver-veined, detached and moved toward the intruder. The jazz stopped. Instead, a single sentence played on loop. "I am here to negotiate." Quinn stared at the screen. "We didn't send a diplomat." "No," Vickers said, voice tight. "We didn't send anyone." 10 minutes passed. Then the rogue ship vanished from sensors. No explosion, no debris, just gone. The alien ship that had approached it rotated slowly in place before returning to its original position. Fleet formation restored. Quinn's stomach twisted. Did they take whoever it was? Vickers didn't speak. The control room fell silent. 2 days later, a transmission crackled through unauthorized, unencrypted, and barely coherent. It came from somewhere near the asteroid belt. A scrambled voice speaking in broken English. "I see them. Not invincible, not unified, fractures inside. Disagreement." The tech scrambled to clean the signal, but the voice cut out. A second later, a different feed opened, not audio-visual. It showed a single frame. A hand-drawn sketch of one of the alien ships, cross-sectioned, with a red circle over a structure near the rear. Handwriting scrawled beneath in frantic block letters. "Weakness equals internal power node, not shielded." Quinn stared at it. Whoever had gone in alone hadn't just survived, they'd sent back a map. Vickers turned slowly toward him. "Get the Geofalcon ready." He stood without a word, no one questioned it. Outside, the alien fleet hovered in silence, unaware that the humans had just gotten their first real glimpse beneath the armor. The game had changed. Quinn's breath fogged inside the helmet as the Geofalcon settled into its launch cradle. He flexed his right hand once, feeling the haptic mesh of the gloves tighten across his knuckles. The neural interface was slower than usual, syncing up, and for the first time since the first test flight, he felt a flicker of hesitation. "Pulse is holding at 92, said the medic standing at the side of the cockpit. "You're hydrated. Cortisol's a touch high, but that's expected." Quinn shifted in the seat. "I've had 3 hours of sleep, a protein bar, and a memory of coffee." "That's about as ready as I get." "Noted," said the medic, already logging the data. Through the reinforced canopy, the control deck beyond the blast doors was alive with motion. Engineers moved with clipped urgency, and a transport drone hummed past carrying a sealed crate the size of a coffin. It bore the emblem of the Deep Orbit Materials Division, but no one seemed to know what was in it. "You're cleared for flight," said a voice in his ear. "But I'd recommend you stay out of the red zones on that schematic. It's not armor, it's a heat sink cluster." "One solid hit and we'll need a hose to collect what's left," Quinn frowned. "That's comforting." "Would you prefer I lie and say it's made of dreams and luck?" "No, I've had enough of both." The bay lights dimmed and the magnetic clamps released with a snap. The Geofalcon edged forward, nose angled slightly up, then launched with a dull roar and a stomach-dropping lurch that pressed him into the seat. The moon loomed larger than he remembered. Not just a pale disk now, but a surface of jagged craters and shadowed ridges that felt too close, too real. "Telemetry green," he said, crossing the outer marker. "Understood, the alien formation hasn't shifted, still holding position. You'll pass within visual range of the smaller scout ship." "Copy." As he approached, the ship in question came into view. It had no visible thrusters or antennae, just shifting panels that rearranged themselves with eerie fluidity. A faint glow pulsed at its center like a heartbeat. Then, without warning, a signal lit up on his screen. Not a weapon lock. A direct transmission request. "Receiving a handshake," Quinn said. "It's not encrypted." "Let it through." The audio cracked once, then cleared. "You are not the same," said a voice. It was androgynous, clipped, and layered over itself as though multiple speakers were speaking in unison. "You are the one who moved inside the storm." Quinn's grip tightened. "You mean the drone pilot from the first engagement?" "No, the one who learned from silence, the one who sent us music." His blood ran cold. "That wasn't me." You share the same signature, the same variance of thought. You are not uniform. No, we're not. There was a pause, then the voice shifted, tone flatter. You are not a hive, you are not consensus, you are divergence. Yeah, he said, eyes narrowing, that's the idea. Another pause, you confuse us. I get that a lot. The transmission ended. The ship rotated slowly, exposing a rear section shaped like a diamond, its inner ridges glowing with soft blue light. Command, Quinn said. I've got visual confirmation. That's the same structure marked in the schematic. Power node exposed. No shielding detected. Understood. Proceed with caution. Engage only if fired upon. He kept his distance, circling at a slow arc. The alien ship made no aggressive move, then from the far side of the fleet, a distortion shimmered into view. A new ship, larger, darker, covered in spiked protrusions, emerged from what looked like a ripple in space. It dwarfed the others. And it was armed. New contact, Quinn said. That's not part of the original formation. No record of that signature, replied Command. It may be a command vessel. Looks like they brought in someone who outranks the welcoming committee. The scout ship in front of him backed off. Then it did something none of the others had. It turned completely around and began transmitting in rapid bursts, not toward Earth, but toward the new arrival. Quinn watched, stunned. They're arguing. Clarify. They're broadcasting on different harmonics, not synchronized, they're not coordinating. They're contradicting each other. The larger vessel responded by firing a narrow beam directly at the scout. The impact was clean and silent, but the scout flickered, shimmered, then blinked out of existence. No detonation detected, Command said. It didn't explode, Quinn replied. It was unmade. He didn't wait for orders. He dove. The Geofalcon screamed toward the larger vessel, its engines pushing hard. The neural interface buzzed with friction as the ship tried to keep up with his reflexes. He toggled to manual override. Targeting reticule locked onto the exposed rear node. Plasma lances charged, firing. The shot struck the node dead center. A ripple of energy flared outward and the rear third of the ship's structure deformed, folding in on itself like collapsing scaffolding. Direct hit, he said. Confirming damage. Structural integrity compromised, Command responded. Get clear. They're reacting. The main vessel turned slowly, then launched a burst of energy toward the Geofalcon. Quinn swung the ship into a barrel roll, the beam grazing the underside. Systems blinked but held. Shields dropping to 60, holding. Then something unexpected. 3 of the alien ships peeled away from the formation, not toward Earth but toward the larger vessel. They're turning on it, he said. They're not unified anymore. Observation confirmed, said Command. We're detecting internal conflict, splinter factions. The scout wasn't alone. The larger vessel fired again, this time at one of the defectors. The smaller ship dodged, then returned fire with a beam of its own, less powerful but targeted. Quinn pulled back, watching as the battle unfolded. Alien against alien, divergence made visible. You're not going to believe this, he said, but they're having a civil war in orbit. We believe it, Command replied, and we're going to let them finish it. Over the next half hour, the splintered faction grew. More ships turned against the Command vessel. It fought back viciously, but the damage Quinn had inflicted had crippled its maneuvering. It couldn't rotate fast enough to defend all sides. One by one, the smaller vessels tore it apart. Then silence. The surviving ships, less than half the original fleet, drifted together. Then, as if on cue, they powered down their weapons. A signal came through, this time translated automatically. Your divergence infected us. We were not prepared. Quinn blinked. You mean our individuality? Yes. It spread. We thought it weakness. And now we see it as something else, something we cannot contain. We will leave. The fleet turned without ceremony. One by one, they vanished into shimmering pockets of bent space. Quinn exhaled. Are we clear? Confirmed. No hostiles remaining. He leaned back in the seat, hands trembling faintly with the aftershock of adrenaline. The Geofalcon systems dimmed to standby. Earth lay below, blue and calm. Back on the ground 3 hours later, the base was quiet. No red lights, no alarms. Just the low murmur of tired staff and the occasional clatter of someone dropping an empty ration tin. Quinn sat on a bench near the hangar, a cold pack pressed against his temple. Vickers sat beside him, holding 2 metal cups. He took one. "Is this coffee or aspirational fuel?" She raised an eyebrow. "Do you care?" He sipped. "It was both." "They're really gone?" he asked. "They left orbit, left no trace, and didn't take any data with them." "Whatever they learned, they're keeping to themselves." "They saw what we are," Vickers nodded. "They saw what we do when someone tries to force us into a mold. We fracture, and sometimes that's the strongest thing we can do." She stood. "You're grounded again, this time for real. 2 weeks. Debriefing, medical checks, and maybe some sleep." He leaned back, letting the warm cup rest on his chest. "Fine by me. Let someone else save the planet for once." The hangar lights dimmed as night shift took over. Earth spun on beneath them, same as always, unconquered, unbroken. And as ever, completely unpredictable.